Okay, so um, when you're on the path to rid yourself of anger, um, you understand that anger is like it's said that anger is the poison that we ingest willingly. Anger is the poison that we ingest willingly. It has a negative effect on our immune system. It has a negative effect on our breathing and respiratory system. It has a negative effect on our blood flow and our heartbeat and all of these physical. It's literally an ailment. It's a poison. It's a toxic. It's a chemically toxic drug, but it happens to start off as a psychological response and reaction that we ingest willingly. What happens to you when you get angry, especially if you're on the path to getting rid of anger as a reaction, is that your mind starts to try and bring your focus to as many things as possible as like evidence for you to be angry, right? So it's like you're unable to focus on one thing to be angry about because your mind, or should I say your spirit, your higher mind, knows that it's really not that big a deal. And it can only pretend to be angry at one thing for so long. And so it for a surprisingly short amount of time. And so it starts to compile all of these pieces of evidence on top of the initial trigger that made you, express anger. This explosion of the mind is due to the fact that you already know you shouldn't be directing your energy outward. Right? Like I said, you know you shouldn't be expressing yourself in this way. But since you are, and since it's like you have an unwillingness to accept that a fear has come to pass, your mind knows, okay, well then I'm going to feed you more things to be angry at and to stay angry at. Okay, because if you, let's say you, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Let's say that you spill something. You spill milk, right? Don't cry over spilled milk. You spill milk and then you get angry. Rah! And it'd be preposterous for you to actually be angry at the fact that you spilled milk for more than a few minutes. It'd be just preposterous, right? And so what happens is you start to think about your fear of poverty. Why do I even live in this house? I hate it here. These stupid tables. I wish I had bigger tables, and I wish I had the house of a rich man so that I, wouldn't spill milk because I would have enough table space and I wouldn't be so confined. And you start to think of your fear of criticism. Now everybody's going to think I'm clumsy. And you start to think of your fear of the, right? You start to compile evidence that says it's justifiable that I'm angry right now. Okay, so I'll read again. This explosion of the mind is due to the fact that you already know you shouldn't be directing your energy outward. Since you know this, your egoic self-image, or ego mind, tries to pile enough evidence that indicates a justification to sending your energy outward in the form of anger. I was recently made a little bit angry by my wife. Story time. I was recently made a little angry by my wife. And it was while I was trying to complete a task that she asked me to complete. It doesn't really matter what the task was. But she attempted to essentially control so much of the task that I started to become upset and show my emotional state outwardly. I started to express myself in an angry way. I didn't go ballistic. I'm not abusive or anything like that. It's just, I started to react. I started and things like that. With my tone of voice and just like my body language, I was getting angry, like any normal person in a relationship. And so, because she was trying, and I felt because she was trying to control too much, she was trying to micromanage too much of what she asked me to do. And so I guess I had a fear of criticism that was showing up, which was like, well, you don't trust me enough to figure this out on my own. Let me go, and I'll figure it out and leave me alone. And it started to come out in anger. And so, where are we at? Here we go. She attempted to control so much of the task that I started to become upset, show my emotion outwardly. At first, just at the one thing, but before long, I found myself thinking of all these other things that justified to my ego, right? It doesn't justify it in truth. It only justifies it to this false self-identity that you can call the ego, okay? Which when you're expressing anger, you're definitely identified with your ego. You're not identified with your natural human nature. You're identified with this constructed self, which is very limited, that you can call the ego. And so I started, before long, I couldn't just keep the one thing in my head and stay angry at that because it wasn't a big deal. So I saw that my mind started piling all of these things that justified to my ego my right to be angry. And since I was practicing being focused on a regular basis by this time in my life, I noticed after a short while exactly what my ego mind was doing. And I started to calm down and practice forgiveness. And I was able to get over it very soon. Now, not usually, but I would say in my old self, in an older, version of myself, in my earlier years, I might have held on to this anger or resented this situation that happened that made me angry for like a year. I was quite extreme in my anger loops when I was growing up. But instead, I only expressed this anger for less than 24 hours. I mean, it was a little bit for someone who doesn't have an automatic anger, who may instead go to sorrow or a different expression of fear. That might seem like a long time, but it's not in comparison to someone who's automatically angry all the time. If you can get over something that's made you angry within 24 hours, then you're probably doing pretty good. At least, for people like me who used to, like I said, anything I could make a mistake by myself in my room and replay that in my own mind every day for 6 to 8 months, and nobody else knows that it ever happened. But that's because that was my habit. I was always expressing or can't say always, but I was often expressing myself in the form of anger. But by the time it was time to go to sleep, I was pretty much over it. So understand, it's not a bad thing. I'm going to read. It's not a bad thing to lose your cool within reason every now and again, as long as you learn from it and make it harder for your ego to take over for the next time. This is progress. Okay? Make it harder for your ego to take over next time. That means really pay attention to everything that your ego mind throws at you in the form of evidence and in the form of your justification for being and remaining angry. This will help you, and this will make it harder for anger to be your expression next time a similar thing happens, because you will have learned from this experience. And we all know that life happens in cycles. Life expresses its own self. Life itself, right? Existence expresses itself in like an outward spiral. So eventually a similar situation will happen again, and it will be up to you to use what you learned to not repeat the same mistake and make it come back in like what seems like a downward spiral, but instead make it come back and make it continue in an upward spiral. Okay? Hopefully you get that metaphor analogy that I just created there. What's not progress is saying sorry more often in a cycle of creating many things to keep apologizing for. Progress is when it gets harder and harder to knock your good attitude out of a positive state. Okay, when it's really hard or harder than it was yesterday to knock you off your game, that's when you know you're making progress. Not when you give yourself the ability to say sorry, but then you don't change the behavior that makes it justifiable for you to keep apologizing over and over and over again. Anybody that has a friend that apologizes too much can tell you that shit gets old very quickly. So yeah, very very important that we know the difference there. And I just wanted to say, as a form of encouragement, that understanding anger can be of great help on the path to enlightenment, temper management. So understanding anger itself and that it comes from fear and it stems directly from one of the 6 basic fears, and studying those things. Understanding anger can help with your temper management, can help in the field of entrepreneurship, because there's going to be a lot of situations that you have to face when you want to work for yourself, that will trigger an anger response that you'll be able to get over and use that form of making progress to make it so that you can't be knocked off your game anymore. Getting rid of addiction, because there's in the fear of loss of love, you may feel like something you're addicted to gives you love or gives you the feeling of love from the inside out. And so you might be angry at the thought of not participating in your addictions, or maybe your one main addiction or whatever. And so understanding anger and getting a deeper and expanding your awareness around anger and your own anger responses can help with your progression through also getting rid of your addictions. Whether it's a sexual addiction or some sort of substance addiction, or a way of thinking that no longer serves you, that you're addicted to, that you love this way of thinking, even though it usually leads to disharmony between you and those in your environment. It's kind of funny, I say here, it's kind of funny how to really understand anger, it will need to show up unexpectedly from time to time. But it's your job not to stay there in the anger and assume that it's impossible to overcome. You do have everything that it takes in your mind and heart to rid yourself of anger. Simply become aware of the process and start making real progress, how I defined it earlier. And last but not least, I want to talk about meditation. Meditation, in my opinion, is the number one self-remedy, right, to anger. It's the number one self-remedy to anger. And I say self-remedy because therapy might be the number one overall remedy to anger. But hopefully therapy is coupled with meditation, because then it'll be double, triple, you'll triple your results in no time. Meditation slows and regulates the heart rate, which is thrown out of whack when you are expressing anger. Meditation regulates your blood flow and respiratory functioning in the body, meaning your breathing and the way that your blood and fluids are moving throughout your body become synced up to the right rhythms when you come out of a meditation, or during your meditation, or just during your regular day. If you are a regular meditator, I am a regular meditator. I meditate every day without fail. And it's not even like I try to. I just, every now and then during the day, more than once a day, I'll just sit and I'll just be in a state of meditation. And this has shown me through my own experience that my bodily functions are working on better and more harmonic rhythms than they were when I was sitting in anger all of the time and fear. Affirmations said, and during meditation, when it comes to getting rid of anger, affirmations that are said in the mind with focus, right? Affirmations that are not just said as a part of a mechanical step by step, but are said with focus and with definite purpose, can greatly aid and support the effects of meditation. Some two affirmations, for example, you can say in your mind as you breathe in and breathe out is, I breathe in and I calm myself. I breathe out and I forgive. I breathe in and I calm myself. I breathe out and I forgive. Now, you don't say these things out loud because you won't be breathing in and breathing out, so you'll say them in your head. Another example, I breathe in and I observe myself. And you understand when you say observe that it means detached observation, not attached observation, but you breathe in and you observe yourself without involvement. And I breathe in, breathing out, I let go. Breathing in, I observe myself. Breathing out, I let go. It's just two examples of some affirmations you can create for yourself during your meditations, if you are meditating with the definite purpose of understanding and ridding yourself of unnecessary expressions of anger. My name is Soul Expression, and I am your freedom lifestyle coach, and I'm very happy that you took this time with me today. Well, this is part 2, so if you watched part 1 maybe yesterday or a week ago, then thank you for that as well. And I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Just know that you have everything that you need to live the life you want to live inside of your mind and inside of your heart. Anything that you could possibly ever ask for is already here, and the fact that you desire it means it's yours already. All you need to do to get it is to hold the desire in your mind indefinitely and work every day towards getting there. Sometimes the work is purely mental, sometimes it's a mixture of mental and physical. But as long as you keep true to where you're going, you will surely get there. Peace and love, y'all. So if you're new to Ufulu Child, make sure you subscribe to get more mind mastery content dropped straight into your YouTube feed. If you enjoyed today's episode of Get Your Mind Right, let me know by clicking that like button, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Peace and love.